how do you recommend someone, let me interview you here, and that is, how do you interview someone to find out what their aptitude is? How do you help people identify what their aptitude is?
Well, here's the major problem. The problem is that this is not taught in high school.
Oh gosh,
it's not taught in college. So you the learning. What I had to do is I had to learn from recruiters. Recruiters do this for a living. This is what they know how to do. And what people don't understand is you got to switch when you want to be a business owner and you want to grow your company. You got to switch from a mentality of being a technician to being a HR person. And that is going to consume 50% of your time. And they don't want it. You have to let go of something to get something else. And mentally, you have to be able to say, what is it going to take for me to learn how to interview well, because we suck at it. We don't interview 100 people over how many, you ask, when was the last time you actually interviewed somebody for a job? They've done it maybe once in their life. So unless you understand it and practice it and understand the ins and outs of recruiting, which is mostly sales, they'll put out an ad that doesn't really attract anybody. I mean, when you say, I've got to do all of this, remember, we're dealing now with millennials. I'm a Gen Xer, and there might be this guy who's before me, and he's got a cultural mentality of what it is to be an employee. And what he needs is a 25-year-old right now who is an iGener. He's not even a millennial anymore. And he's got three different gaps in culture that he doesn't overcome because he wants it done his way. Right. And he doesn't want to put himself into that person's shoes. When I am a salesperson, I have to be empathetic. I got to figure out what you want. And what he's saying, I want somebody that does this. Can you do the job? I mean, when you got an iGener who's used to being behind a keyboard,
right,
and you're telling him, so you got to find someone that really wants to be outside is a very special person.
And that's just the start of it. I mean, it goes up from there. Absolutely.
Yeah. So what I had to do in Miami, let's say you're hiring, I'm hiring in a county of 1.8 million. Okay. And I put out an ad. Okay. I get between 700 and 1,000 applicants. Okay. How do you manage that from an HR perspective when you can't sit? Because here's what everybody thinks. I'm going to sit down with everybody that calls me and give them an interview. I can't give them an interview. So what I do is I have a system that I developed that sounds cold and it's cold-hearted, but in the reality is it's about me finding that person who has the aptitude. Right. And if a person can't follow directions, he can't work in this business. Because this business is about following protocol, policy, procedure. So I will put out an ad and I will say, I need somebody with 5 years of customer service experience. Okay, so what somebody will come in and say, well, I have 5 years of customer service experience. What have you done? Well, I work for Starbucks as a barista, and I work for McDonald's, and I say, okay. That fits, right? But the problem is he doesn't have the aptitude. Right. Well, how do I determine that? Well, I have a link that I simply put on my first, and it says, here's a link to get an instant interview. Because he's an iGener. He's a millennial. He understands this. He says, well, I wouldn't put that because you're not going to get quality people. I can't get a guy 50 years old to climb on a ladder. I need a young person. That's not age discrimination. That's what it requires. Yeah. So I'm looking for a young person, and I'm tailoring that ad to their mindset. And I said, okay, this is what I want. So by default, I just eliminate anybody who doesn't understand what a hyperlink is.
Right.
And then I go ahead and I say, okay, now I tell him, follow that hyperlink and go get your internet. I get an email back that says, your hyperlink doesn't work. I said, if you don't understand how to copy and paste a hyperlink, you can't work for me because you can't think out of the box. You have no skills to solve simple problems. He just eliminated himself.
Nice.
So now there's a video interview, and now I have 20 questions on that video interview. and I want to see what you look like and how you present yourself and how you can read, and it has questions they got to answer. And now I see the person's vocabulary. And now I see, if you're taking this interview laying down on your bed with a tank top, do I want to hire you? If you can't read, do I want to hire you?
You can't, because you're in the pest control business. If they can't read, they won't get licensed.
Exactly. So now this process of elimination, you know how many people out of 700 will take the actual video interview?
10?
1%.
So 7.
Seven. Okay, out of those 7.
I was close.
Okay, so 1% really qualify to do this job.
Wow.
Now, as a potential,
Right.
let's take it a little bit further. So now I pay for software that is aptitude testing.
Mm-hmm.
And then now I want to know what this person's personal profile. So I look at his interview and he says, I ask him, why do you want to leave your job? And one of the answers is usually, well, I haven't moved up in this company. I've been here, I've been doing my job, and how long have you been there? He's been there 6 months. He already expects to be a manager. Has unrealistic expectations. The expectation of an iGener is if I'm at a company, I should be at least after 6 months, assistant manager. If there is no assistant manager position, he wants to move on very quickly. Do I want to waste my time with somebody who wants to be here 6 months, and after 6 months, he's not moving up fast enough because I'm a small company, I'm a one-man show. He ain't moving up for 3 to 4 or 5 years.
Right.
So you see all these problems that these they don't want to deal with. They don't understand it. So what I'm looking for, then I say, okay, do I even want to give him a profile testing? And I don't. I just write him back, and I usually look at the entire list. This guy's not going to work. I know he's not going to work. And I just basically say, well, thank you very much for your input. We're looking at our other options. The guy that I said, hey, man, this kid has been working since he was 16. He's stuck at this job for 4 years.
Wow.
And he's still there, and he hasn't moved up. Let me see what's about this kid. And so I will go ahead, and then I'll give him a profile. When I get the profile back, I'm matching the questions. I'm matching his persona. I'm looking at his personality. And I see where his weakness is. He's got no self-esteem. His self-esteem is in the toilet. He doesn't see himself as somebody that, so how can I put him, and can I work with him on that? Because that's really the only fault.
Right.
But I realize that now I have to, as an owner, invest a lot of time in nurturing. And do I have the patience to nurture? And if you don't have the patience to nurture, you're not going to be able to deal with this guy because he's going to drive you insane because he wants to be patted on the back all the time and may feel important. Right. And I can deal with that because I got 2 of those. So I understand that I have to, of grooming them all the time. And dealing with him, I look at my employees just as children because I got to raise them up for them to be what I want them to be. And I got to invest. That's an enormous amount of time and energy. And so that's what I do. So I give them the profile. Once I look at the profile, I says, you know what? This kid is worth an interview. That's 1 out of 700. So I only invest my time in that 1 of 700 to spend an hour with him. And then I say, listen, I want you to go with me in the field and see what we do.
Yeah, you have to do a ride along. Absolutely.
So then I say, okay, let's schedule a ride along. How do you feel about this? I take him to the grossest roach job that I could find. And I put him in that environment and see how he feels. Because then I know if he has the aptitude in the stomach for some of this. Because he could test great. He could interview great. And then then you got the third part, the fourth part of this, Stephen. None of these guys have anything to offer. You don't have an income. That's you saying, I'm not going to pay a new guy who has no experience $13, $14 an hour. You're not going to get them to come work for you.
Right.
So you have that mentality that he isn't worth anything. No, he's worth 10x that to you because now you can focus on selling.
Yep.
So the idea of what he's worth is not in relationship to what he knows, is in relationship to what he can do that you no longer have to do.
So how do you find because a lot of business owners are not able, they're single man operations, they know they need to hire someone else to grow, and they may be at a place where they're bumping up where they need to hire someone else to grow or to continue their business. How do we help them recognize the transition they need to make internally to themselves to make that next jump?
I think as a consultant, that is a lot of what we need to do as consultants is they realize it. And they realize what they need to do. They just realize they don't want to, and if you can't make that person. So as a consultant, if I'm dealing with somebody who says I want to grow, I got to put them through. I got to do a real big gut check with them first and say, here's what you're going to need to do, and are you in the position to want to do that?
Yeah.
And most of the time it happens this way: is I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired now. And I realize I have to, but that's going to be a lot of work for me as a consultant to take you by the hand, and be willing to invest time in you, when at the end you're going to tell me, you know what, this is too hard, I'm going to drop out.
Right.
And I got to charge you for that. And this is where most WCOs and most PCOs don't get it, that I can't invest time with you unless you're absolutely sure of what you want to do, and move forward, and then I can help you, but my time is valuable too, and I only have so much bandwidth.
Yeah, I mean it's because time is so valuable. I just think that we have got to do something as an industry to try to bridge this tremendous labor problem that we have.
Yeah.
What do you think about many states? For the PCOs, this is where PCOs have a significant advantage, and that is they have a 2-tiered licensing system, where you have to be in the business for 2 years before you're able to get an ownership level license. What are your thoughts on that? Because I don't know of any state in the country that has that for wildlife control operators.
Look, I've looked at it from both ways. I've looked at it and when I compare things, I compare them to sometimes other industries.
Sure.
Since I've had so many experiences. For instance, in the state of Florida, to be a nail technician, to do nails, it's 1,000 hours of actual practice in a school. It costs you. You got to do it. I forget how many. It's ridiculous how many hours you need to then go get your license with no experience.
Right.
There is more of a requirement from an academic perspective and a practice perspective to do nails than there is to do pest control, because I can be in pest control for 3 years, not really be a baseboard sprayer, not really know anything, not document that I know anything. And then all I really have to do is show that I have knowledge of the law, which is really all they care about.
Right.
80% of the test for becoming a PCO is understanding the law and understanding environment and understanding. Nothing has to do. When I took my GHP test, there were only 2 insects that I had to identify. I didn't have to prove I knew pest control. I just had to prove that I can follow the law.
Right.
So I always have this thing where I challenge people is the 3 years necessary? The only reason the 3 years are necessary, you'll never get rid of it, is because the industry will lobby against it, because to self-protect itself a lot of the time.
Sure. Yeah. And I don't deny that at all. But that also allows them to a recruiting posture to bring people in. At least you have them trapped for 3 years. If they're going to go off on their own to build a competing company,
they won't.
At least you had them for 3 years.
And here's the main misconception. People don't understand that there's the law of averages. Yeah. And when we're looking at a pest control technician business owner, none of the 2 that I have right now are ever going to go out and start their own business. They don't have what it takes.
Okay.
I know that. And they know that. They know it. So the idea is, when you're doing this evaluation of psychological profile analysis, working with them hand by hand, he may think he wants to, but the reason he wants to quit usually is because he wants to quit you.
Yeah,
People don't
that may be
quit.
true.
People don't quit their companies. People quit usually their bosses.
I learned that principle a little while ago, and I can tell you that is so true. I heard a statistic, and it's probably just off the cuff from somebody. I don't know if there's any real data behind it, but it just resonated with my soul. I could say that. I've asked some other people. Let me ask you. It said that 75% of the time, people leave. They're not leaving the job. They're leaving the manager.
Yep.
And it just resonated with my soul. I just felt like this feels right, because obviously
Mm-hmm.
not everyone leaves a job because of bad reasons. Sometimes they're
Right.
getting a promotion, they might have moved, or gotten married, or whatever the case may be. Not everyone leaves a job because their boss was a jerk. But so you think that 75% is accurate? You think that's a fair rule of thumb?
Well, I think we're seeing a lot of dynamics changing. Like, for instance, 65% of, by all the employment studies that are done, saying 65% of people are looking to move from their position.
Right.
And the number one reason is they're overworked. They're doing the job of 1.5 to 2 people.
Wow.
You compound that problem with a bad manager.
You're right.
So you're compounding the issues where the person is saying, I'm looking to get into the gig economy because it's popular and it's cool now to be an entrepreneur.
Right. Yeah.
And I can do this work from home. I don't need to be in an office. So remember, everything has changed and the dynamics changed. The people are bringing in what are H-1 visas or for landscape. The landscape industry is publishing on the cover of their magazine attorneys that will bring in employees to work for you because you can't find landscapers in this country.
That's amazing. There's college courses for landscaping now.
It has nothing to do with the college course. It has to do with, do I want to be on a lawnmower in the heat for 10 hours a day?
Okay.
You see that the issue is it's not appealing. The industry is not appealing to the generation. Here's the other shocking thing. You got kids who are graduating from college at 24, 25, never had a job.
Yeah. Oh, I believe that. That would be the case. I think that there's so many people. The fact that they're 24 and 25 graduating from college meant they took their sweet time going through school too.
But they're switching out. Like, I just had my brother-in-law. He switched out. He went into a film career. I said, dude, you're going to starve as a filmmaker. So then in midway, after a year and a half, he switches over to physical therapy, which is more apted to him, to his personality. And I said, that was probably the smartest move you made, but he took a year off. So now he's 24, 25, he just turned. He's still not going to graduate for another 2 years.
Yeah, but he has to get don't you have to have a master's degree in order to do the work?
Well, here you have to have a bachelor's.
Yeah.
And then you can get your master's degree later, but with a bachelor's, you can't.
Oh, you can start. Okay.
Yeah, you can start.
A lot of states, it's almost a master's now in order to do.
Yeah. So you can see when you're looking at competition, we understand that when you're in business, you're competing for employees and you're competing for companies, for customers. You're not just competing for customers. People think I'm just competing for the market. No, you're indirectly competing with do I want to go do wildlife control because I love to deal with animals and I've always been good with animals? Or would I rather deal with plants because I love plants?
Right.
I will deal with plants, but I won't deal with animals. So you remember, you're asking somebody to have an aptitude, something they're wired for, that you can't change and you can't create. And that is the big challenge that we're having, is that you got the construction industry that needs 25 to 35-year-olds to work in it. And young kids don't want to be in construction. Now tends to be a trend right now, which we need to jump on it. And the trend is that kids are realizing, I don't want $150,000 school debt for a career that I'm not going to do. I might look at a trade job now. So the trades are starting to become popular again because they want to learn hands-on. But if you're not a hands-on trainer, you're not going to keep him.
You're not going to do it. Yeah, and I'm glad to see that, because it's a long time. It's a long time coming. The lie of college has gone on, and I have multiple degrees, folks. So I'm not anti-college, but certainly the idea that you have to have a college degree to be successful is a lie.
Yeah, if you want to, if you want to attract young people,
Yeah.
stop doing videos on Facebook, and then start doing wildlife videos on TikTok, because that's where the kids are. You're not going to attract. Facebook is old.
Yeah.
TikTok is progressively now getting older, where it isn't the 14-year-old kids anymore, which you want to start influencing them. You want to start doing it at that point, but you want to start now. They're progressively getting older into the 20s. So
you're telling people if they're in wildlife, if they have their business in wildlife control, they need to start getting the word out to maybe that's what they should be doing when they go to schools for show and tell. Is like, would you want a career in this? I tell people, for what limited contact I would have, I would think ranch hands would be a great place to start for finding workers in wildlife control.
Yeah, but put a thing like a major city like New York, Miami, Chicago. It's tougher because kids aren't used to the farm life. They aren't used to. I mean, I remember taking kids camping for a youth group. They've never seen a river in their life. I mean, kids that have never known what a lake is to fish.
Wow.
And I took them camping to see wildlife. They've never seen it before. They had no idea what this was. So understand it. And so it's a lot of things that go into play. And the question is, well, I'm just too busy. I don't have the time to do any of this. And then so it's 1%. When I talk to people and I say, if I'm in the consulting business of helping businesses grow, I realize that I'm in a 1% game. That 99% are going to tell me, yeah, but I can't do that. Yeah, but I don't want to. Yeah, but. And you're making excuses. There's only that one guy that says, you know what? I'm wired to do that. I am. If you will help me, I will go ahead and move forward with this, and I'm all in. But it's that 1%.
Yeah.
That's the harsh reality. So people want the help, but the problem is they don't want anybody telling them how to do it because everything makes them uncomfortable. I don't want to be a salesman. I don't want to be a marketer. You're going to have to be a salesman, and you're going to have to be a marketer. There's just no way around it.
Yeah, and I do think that wildlife control tends to attract people that tend to be more introverted.
Really?
Yeah. And also tend to be loners because it's sort of that trapping. And I think that may be changing now with pest control. I don't know enough about the pest control industry, whether the technicians tend to be loners as much. I think there's, they tend to have a little more camaraderie because businesses tend to be a little larger in the PCO world. But with wildlife control, you're it. You're like a pioneer, except it's a pioneer going through an attic. No uncharted territory, right? So it's there's no one else, and so you tend to have that introverted nature, and so you just want to I just want to do the job. I don't want to have to deal with people. A lot of them hate the customer side of things the most, and that's probably the problem is the trapping of the animal or the animal control is the easy part. It's the people that are the problem.
Oh, I just did my course. Part of the course that I'm teaching for the course that we're putting together is understanding that 90% of your job is learning to deal with people. And I do have that same problem with techs applying because they think they're technically minded. They're good with their hands, but they're not good with people. And they think that it's about killing the insect, about spraying. This is the mentality. If I get a B&G, how hard can it be to go around apartments spraying with a B&G? I mean, that's the mentality of pest control. And it's not. And then, so my first class that I'm actually teaching, which is Customer Wow, has to do with debunking a lot of the myths, because I'm also using this course as something that I'm going to be giving to technicians. Say, I need you to take this course first. You're one of the candidates in line to be hired. I need you to take this course first to see if this is even going to be for you before we waste any time trying to get all this, because all the studies show that the majority of people quit their job within the first 6 months because they weren't properly onboarded. Their expectations weren't realistic. The expectation of the boss and the expectation of the employer are completely out of line. And people, so the chances of somebody ever sticking with you long enough to go compete against you is so unlikely that it's mostly they're going to quit on you within the first 6 months and say, this job really isn't for me. I thought it was going to be something else, and it's not. When they figure out how much they have to read, when they figure out they got to memorize 36 labels or 16 labels, that they're responsible for DOT, hazmat, that they're responsible for the environment, that they can be personally fined and imprisoned if they misapply a product. These are a lot of things that, and then that 80% of it has to do with communicating effectively with that customer. You left the gate open, you used the water, things that you don't think about because you're introverted, you're focusing on technical, that you don't realize that there's so many things so many aspects of this job that you have to deal with, and it has to be an effective communicator. How many kids are actually effective communicators when they're used to being like this?
Yeah, no, it's a trouble. And I think, but the one difference I would say, just to push back just a little bit, and that is with WCO work, though, we have fewer regulations in what's going on with the pest control world. So,
Yeah.
And sometimes some people think we have fewer because they ignore a lot of regulations, but certainly when it comes to the wild, because a lot of time we don't have to worry about pesticides because the pesticides aren't even allowed for a lot of the species that we deal with. But nevertheless, I do think the point maybe some of these individuals that I've spoken to have had situations where they've lost employees and they've started competing
Of course.
businesses. But I wonder because of the generational issues, whether that's still occurring now, because people
Even more.
tend to be, I think there's less entrepreneurship among some of the younger generations, or do you think there's more?
No, there's more because it's been popularized. Entrepreneurship, but understand that entrepreneurship is thought about as building up a new tech company, a new app,
Right.
Building a website, selling stuff on Amazon. Why would a kid go work who's smart, go work for you? Think about this for a minute. If he could build an Amazon store, buy stuff from China for $1, sell it on Amazon for 13.
Sure.
So you realize that you got to deal with a lower skill set. You have to deal with it's having aptitude is not necessarily certain skills, but is that kid that you're literally? I mean, when I think of a kid 25 years old, still a kid to me. I'm 50. Right. So there's a lot of work that you have to do as a boss that has nothing to do with the actual trapping. It has to do with all of this stuff that we discussed, and it's a lot when you've never been taught. So what I tell people is, when you decide you want to start hiring, start looking into HR and start looking into recruiting and start doing it a year before and invest that time a year before through the process, because you're going to need to get prepared for this process. You can't do it. I need a guy now. And then what you end up doing is making the mistake of hiring a guy with a pulse to fill a job. It's like the guy who's I just need a wife now, and you're going to make a mistake because you're going to take what comes in through the door you don't know how to hire. You don't know how to recruit. You're going to make a huge mistake. So the idea is start learning about this process of HR, of recruiting, onboarding, keeping employees, because it's not always about the money. It's not always about the 401k. It's not always about the profit. It's about, hey, am I doing what I enjoy? Am I being recognized for it? And am I being paid fairly?
Right.
It's not that complicated, but we overcomplicate it. But it's if you have the wrong, and here's the other thing. A solo operator doesn't have a corporate culture. He is the culture.
He is the culture.
So however he wakes up in the morning, if he's a grumpy guy and you want that guy to run around with you all day and you're grumpy, he's not putting up with you.
No.
So it's a lot of the people skills aren't there for pest control operators either.
Right.
They have to learn those people skills, and they have to start, and then you start dealing with all this and the ego comes into play. Well, I've done just fine. Look at me. I'm 40 years old and I've made it just fine. Okay, but you're still by yourself.
Right. No, I think that self-reflective aspect, I think that's probably one of the bigger aspects in my experience. I don't see a lot of wildlife control operators really being self-reflective.
Yeah.
So they're that inward, that critical look inside of evaluating, how is this working? How am I dealing with this person? How am I interrelating? Was I wrong? Did I handle that correctly? I don't often see that within the industry. That's certainly going to affect how you relate to your employees, because
Yeah.
if you can't see, yeah, I yelled at my employee because he was available and I was angry at something else.
Yeah.
Transference happens all the time. It's the
Yeah.
proverbial kick the dog when the dog didn't do anything.